Sometimes the people we ignore are the ones who need us the most. Tell me, if it were you sitting there with your child, would you have invited her over or stayed silent like the rest? Comment and let me know. The cafe buzzed with life that morning. Cups clinking, steam hissing, laughter rising and falling like waves. It was a place of connection, of comfort, of routine. But for one woman, it was a place of exile. Sarah stood near the entrance, clutching her frayed bag strap as though it were the last anchor keeping her from collapsing. Her blouse was neat but faded, her shoes scuffed but tied with care. She had tried, like she always did, to make herself presentable. Yet no matter how carefully she pressed her clothes, there was no hiding the exhaustion that bent her shoulders forward or the loneliness etched deep into her face. She hovered in the corner, trying to be invisible. Table after table seemed to close itself to her. Businessmen pulling their laptops closer, students stacking books across empty seats, friends turning their laughter inward like a shield. Nobody said anything, but the silence was louder than rejection. Sarah told herself she was waiting for a chair to open up, but deep down she knew the truth. She wasn't waiting for coffee. She was waiting to be noticed, to be acknowledged, to be seen. Across the room, at a window table where sunlight spilled across an open sketchbook, Daniel sat with his daughter Lily. She was bent over her crayons, tongue between her teeth as she filled the page with bursts of color, stick figures, crooked stars, a lopsided rainbow. Pretty good, huh? She asked with a grin. Daniel chuckled. Better than good. That's a masterpiece. Her giggle bubbled out, warm and unguarded. But then, suddenly, her crayon stilled. Her wide eyes had drifted past the page, past her father, toward the lonely figure standing at the wall. Daddy, she whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Daniel glanced down. What is it, sweetheart? Why is that lady standing? Everyone else is a chair. Daniel followed her gaze and saw her for the first time. Really saw her, the way Sarah shrank into herself, bracing as though rejection was inevitable. She looked lost. She looked sad, Lily added, her small voice heavy with certainty. The simplicity of her words struck Daniel harder than he expected. He could have brushed it off, told Lily to finish her drawing, let the moment pass. But children see what adults learn to ignore, and now he couldn't unsee it. Lily tugged again. She shouldn't stand there, Daddy. She needs a seat. Daniel exhaled slowly, torn between retreat and action. Around them, the cafe carried on, oblivious. But at his table, something shifted. A choice pressed against him, heavier with each second. Finally, he lifted his hand, his voice steady but quiet. Excuse me, he called across the cafe. His eyes met Sarah's. Would you like to join us? For a heartbeat, she froze. Surely he didn't mean her. Surely this was a mistake. Yet his expression stayed open, and Lily's smile widened with a warmth that pulled at her chest. Sarah's throat tightened. It had been so long since anyone had offered her something so simple. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pulled out the chair and sat down. Lily pushed her sketchbook toward her. You can help me if you want. Sarah's fingers shook as she picked up a crayon. And then, for the first time that morning, a small smile broke through her exhaustion. She wasn't invisible anymore. For the first few minutes, the table was quiet, save for the soft scratching of crayons against paper. Sarah kept her eyes low, as if afraid that direct contact might shatter this fragile welcome. She traced a crooked star onto the page Lily pushed toward her, careful not to press too hard. Daniel noticed her hands, thin, callous, carrying stories she hadn't spoken yet. He poured her a cup of coffee, sliding it gently in her direction. Milk? Sugar? He asked. Her voice came out small. Just black, thank you. Lily leaned over her, grinning. You draw like me, she said, comparing their uneven stars. See, Daddy? We're both artists. Daniel smiled, relieved at his daughter's gift for dissolving silence. Looks like I'm outnumbered. Guess I'll stick to pancakes instead of portraits. For the first time, Sarah laughed, soft, hesitant, as though she'd forgotten how. But the sound carried a warmth that surprised even her. Bit by bit, the edges of her guardedness began to soften. She told him her name. She mentioned she used to love sketching when she was Lily's age, though she hadn't held a crayon or pencil for years. Why'd you stop? Lily asked innocently. Sarah hesitated, her smile faltering. Life got busy, I suppose. Daniel caught the flicker in her eyes, the kind of answer that only covered the surface. He didn't press. Instead, he changed the subject, asking Lily about her drawing. But as they spoke, he noticed Sarah's gaze lingering on his daughter, on her ease, her laughter, her unguarded joy. It was as though she were watching something she had once known, but lost along the way. When the waitress came by, Daniel ordered an extra plate of pancakes. Sarah tried to protest, fumbling with her worn wallet, but he waved it off. It's just breakfast, he said gently. Her lips parted as if to argue, then close again. Gratitude shone in her eyes, though she didn't voice it. The pancakes arrived steaming, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah allowed herself to eat without rushing, without guilt, without the weight of being an outsider. Lily chatted on about school, about her favorite colors, about how she and her dad sometimes made pancakes shaped like animals. Sarah listened intently, nodding, asking questions. Slowly, she leaned into the moment, letting its warmth thaw the chills she had carried into the cafe. Daniel sat back, watching them, something stirring quietly in his chest. He had grown used to the rhythm of life with just him and Lily, simple, predictable, safe. Yet here was a stranger at their table, and somehow it didn't feel intrusive. It felt natural. As they finished their meal, Sarah's eyes dropped to the sketchbook once more. She drew a small flower in the corner, its petals uneven but delicate. Lily gasped, "That's beautiful. You have to draw more." Sarah shook her head, embarrassed. "It's nothing." But Daniel caught the faintest trace of pride flicker across her face before she closed the sketchbook. The cafe had emptied some since she first arrived. People came and went, unaware that something subtle but profound had just shifted at one small table by the window. For the first time in a long while, Sarah didn't feel like a shadow. She felt seen. And Daniel couldn't shake the thought that maybe inviting her over hadn't been chance at all, but the start of something neither of them had expected. When the plates were cleared away, Daniel noticed the way Sarah's gaze lingered on the streaks of syrup left behind, as if she were reluctant for the meal to end. Lily, of course, was far from finished with her new companion. She scooted closer, tugging on Sarah's sleeve. "Do you want to see my treasure box?" she asked eagerly. Sarah blinked, startled. "Your treasure box?" Lily nodded seriously. "I keep all my important things in it. Rocks, buttons, feathers, even a shiny marble I found at the park." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I can show you, but only if you promise not to tell anyone." A laugh slipped past Sarah's lips before she could stop it. "I promise," she said softly. Daniel watched the exchange, a strange warmth building in his chest. His daughter had never taken to strangers so quickly. Normally shy, Lily was open herself like a book to this woman they had just met. And Sarah, she was responding with a tenderness that seemed instinctive, natural. They left the cafe together, stepping into the crisp morning air. Daniel offered to walk Sarah partway, and she accepted after only the briefest hesitation. Lily skipped between them, chattering about school projects and her favorite fairy tales. For a while, Sarah said little, but her shoulders were less hunched now, her steps less hurried. The quiet presence of the father and daughter beside her seemed to anchor her. As they turned a corner, Lily darted ahead to chase a pigeon. Daniel slowed his pace, glancing at Sarah. "You live nearby?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Not far," she murmured. "A few blocks." Something in her tone made him wonder, but he didn't push. Instead, Sarah spoke again, her words cautious, as though each one carried weight. "I used to come to that cafe a long time ago, with someone. Back then, it felt different." Daniel looked at her, waiting. She pressed her lips together, then sighed. "I was married once." He loved the cafe, said it made the city feel smaller, more human. After he passed, her voice faltered, but she forced herself onward. "I stopped going anywhere familiar. Too many ghosts in the corners." Daniel's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded, eyes fixed on the pavement. "Grief is strange. People think it fades, but it doesn't. It just changes shape. Some days, it's sharp. Other days, it's dull, but it's always there." For a moment, Daniel had no words. He thought of his own quiet nights, of raising Lily alone, of the way loneliness crept in when the house grew silent. Different losses, perhaps, but the weight was familiar. Ahead of them, Lily twirled with her arms outstretched, laughing as the pigeon flapped away. The sound cut through the heaviness like sunlight breaking clouds. Sarah's face softened as she watched the little girl, her lips curving into the smallest of smiles. "She's beautiful," she whispered, "and brave." Daniel followed her gaze. "She keeps me going," he admitted, "more than she'll ever know." They reached a quiet street lined with aging brick buildings. Sarah slowed. "This is me," she said, gesturing to a weathered doorway. For a heartbeat, none of them moved. Lily clutched Sarah's hand tightly, unwilling to let go. "You'll come back, right?" the girl asked, her eyes wide. Sarah hesitated, then crouched to meet her gaze. "If your dad doesn't mind," she said gently, "I'd like that." When she straightened, Daniel caught the flicker of something vulnerable in her expression, hope mingled with fear. He nodded once. "We'll see you again." As Sarah slipped inside the building, Daniel felt the morning air settle heavy on his chest. He didn't know what this connection meant or where it might lead, but he knew one thing for certain. Neither of their lives would be quite the same again. The days that followed unfolded in quiet, unexpected ways. Daniel and Lily found themselves returning to the cafe more often, not because of the coffee, but because they hoped Sarah might be there. And more often than not, at first, she would slip in hesitantly, scanning the tables as if expecting rejection. But each time Daniel raised a hand in welcome and Lily lit up with joy, the stiffness in her shoulders eased. Soon, their small corner by the window became less a chance meeting and more a ritual. Lily would chatter about her day, her drawings, her classmates, the song songs she learned at school. Sarah listened with a patience that Daniel admired, leaning close to help Lily with her spelling homework or humming along when she stumbled over a tune. Sometimes, Sarah even surprised them both by finishing the lyrics softly, her voice carrying a gentleness that filled the cafe with something unspoken yet deeply felt. Daniel often caught himself watching, not out of curiosity, but with the quiet recognition of someone witnessing a slow mending. Sarah's laughter was rare, but when it surfaced, light and unguarded, it shifted the air around them. He realized he hadn't heard that kind of laughter at his table since his wife had passed. But outside the warmth of their little circle, Sarah's world was harsher. She searched for work tirelessly, ironing her blouse in the mornings and rehearsing hopeful lines in the mirror. Most interviews ended with polite smiles and empty promises. Each rejection pressed against her like invisible weights, threatening to undo the progress she had made. One evening, sitting at their familiar spot, Sarah's smile faltered. She stirred her tea absent-mindedly, her hands trembling. "You okay?" Daniel asked softly. She shook her head, whispering, "I don't know how much longer I can keep trying. Every door feels shut before I even knock." Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. "Sarah, don't let the world convince you that you don't matter. You're stronger than you think. Lily and we see you." Her eyes glistened at his words, not from pity, but from the truth she hadn't let herself believe. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to lean into that hope, fragile but real. Weeks passed, and then came the call that changed everything. A local bookstore wanted to meet her. The interview was different this time. The manager really listened, and when he offered her the job, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. On her first day, she came to the cafe with a light in her eyes Daniel hadn't seen before. "It's small," she said, almost laughing, "but it feels right, like I finally belong somewhere." Lily clapped her hands. "Can we visit you there?" Sarah smiled, her laughter fuller now, no longer careful. "Of course." That evening, as rain streaked the windows, Sarah walked in the cafe not as a shadow by the wall, but as part of something steady. Daniel pulled out her chair without a word. Lily slid the sketchbook toward her. "You're coloring with me today," Lily announced firmly. Sarah laughed, real and unguarded, as she picked up a crayon. Daniel watched them, his heart tightening with a quiet, certain truth. Kindness had stitched their broken pieces into something whole. And in that warm cafe, surrounded by laughter, Sarah finally felt it. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was home,